So our presenter is a technical strategist, full stack engineer, author, and presenter. He's had his hands on the keys for over 20 years. He loves JavaScript, React, and one of my favorites, whiskey. Let's give a big virtual welcome for Mike Cavaliere. The title of his presentation is Growing Engineers with Weekly Investment Time. The stage is all yours, Mike.
All right. Hi, everybody. How's it going, Craft Conference? I kind of wish y'all could reply and tell me it's going awesome, but I'm going to assume you are. So the title of this talk is Growing Engineers with Paid Investment Time. And it has to do with this notion of investment time that we give to employees every week, enable them to grow and enable the company to grow through them. So quick background on me. Let me get my slide up. Name is Mike Cavaliere. My title is Senior Engineering Strategist. I work for a company called Echobind. I've been an engineer in different capacities, front end, full stack, mostly for many years now at this point. And I do a little bit of teaching and presenting and strategy work and picking out like what technologies to use for different things. And I've been well aware over my career just how much engineers need to learn. We have to learn a lot, and we have to do it constantly. And I kind of wanted to, as an exercise, quantify it a little bit. And thinking of how I could do that, I said, well, let me take JavaScript. JavaScript's been a common thread in my career. Maybe I'll just kind of list out all the libraries I've worked with over 20 years. I started to do that, and I realized it was a lot. JavaScript has gone over the past 20 years, like from just being something you use to add interactivity to web pages and make fetches to the back end, to what you build applications in from front to back. And you do all kinds of things with it. You can do robotics with JavaScript. But this is just over the course of web development in 20 years. Like I've gone from, leveraging vanilla JavaScript, a bunch of different libraries, jQuery, to moving into the React world and all of the things that go along with the React world, which is a ton. It's an insane amount of learning. And we've all experienced this as engineers. If you've been in engineering for any amount of time, you know that even getting started, it takes a little bit to be productive. You have to understand some basic concepts, and to grow and keep up with the times, technology evolves really quickly. There's always something new to learn. So not only do you have to pick and choose, but you have to allocate time for it. So often it can feel really overwhelming. This is every once in a while how I feel when I just look at all the things there are to learn. The other thing is, like, not only do we have to learn a lot, we have to do it regularly. It never stops. We have to do it at our jobs. We have to do it sometimes on our own. And throughout our whole career, no matter what we do, if we become senior engineers or architects, we have to keep on top of it, even though other people are doing more of the day-to-day coding. We still need to keep our knowledge up. If you become engineering managers or directors of engineering, you're probably doing less coding, but you still have to understand what libraries are out there, what we should use, what we shouldn't use, what fits our project. And the team's work as a whole, and everybody needs to keep their knowledge up no matter what their role is. And it doesn't end. So when do we do it all? This is something I've been pondering lately. I'm blessed to work at a company that has investment time, but like, where does the average developer do it? So I started putting together hypothetical schedules. So let's say we take this example. This is a very vanilla schedule. Let's say, breakdown is the blue is work time. The red is just time outside of work, to do anything related in life, whether it's leisure or things that we need to do to take care of our lives, errands and such. In this hypothetical schedule, we've got a 9-to-5 workday, so a typical 8-hour workday, which not everybody has. I don't know how common that is these days. But let's just say it's 40-hour work week. The green time is where you might fit in learning time in the scenario. If you were to squeeze in time from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. every day, so 2 hours immediately after your workday ends, that gives you 10 hours a week. And if you're learning 10 hours a week, whatever you want to learn, whether it's a new language, new framework, or any other related topic, that's a great amount of time. And, we know that if we're picking up a new language or topic, a couple of things are really important. Cadence and consistency are the biggest things, in my opinion. You need to do it a little bit every day if possible, and you need a certain amount of time each session. 2 hours is an excellent amount of time. Too much more, too much less isn't necessarily as effective. Breaks certainly help, but like 2 hours is a good chunk where you can do a lot and make a lot of progress, and that memory will be consolidated, especially if you're getting a good night's sleep at night. In a schedule like this, you still have your evenings, you still have your leisure time, you still have your time for life. So something like this can work really great. The only downside is if you're learning right at the end of the day, you're not getting your brain's freshest hours. So it's not fully optimal. So that's one thing you consider here, but this is certainly very viable. Now, not everybody has a 40-hour work week. I found some stats online. I don't know how widespread it is, but there was an old stat that said like the typical startup worker works 55-hour work weeks. I don't know how widespread that is these days, especially across industries and different, stages of startups. But I do know that I've worked at a startup and certainly worked hours like this. I've heard of many other people that work really typically over 50 hours. And a schedule like this, let's just say you've got a 10-hour workday. So that's 55 hours and then a little bit more on the weekends. Because if you're working like heavy work days like that, probably a little chaotic at the job, you're going to have some weekend time. So the blue is work time, which is bigger than it was in the last slide. Your time for life is definitely getting reduced. Your time for learning is a little harder to add in. And if you notice the yellow, this is more of a personal thing. I don't know how many people run into this, but if you're working a 55-hour work week, chances are you want to party a little bit hard too. I would probably want to drink after I'm working a 10-hour workday, maybe not every day because I know it will hurt. But I also kind of want to just go out and kind of balance out the heavy work with a little bit of heavy fun. So anyway, in this hypothetical scenario too, if you're really diligent, you could squeeze in learning time a couple of nights a week, late at night, or big chunks on the weekends. But you're sacrificing a lot. You're sacrificing whatever goes on in your life, interactions with, friends, family, leisure time. Even if you take the partying out, you're still sacrificing a good amount of like the time you need to decompress in the evening. You may even be sacrificing sleep. And you're also not getting the best hours necessarily. Without a recharge on the weekend, your energy for anything, including work and learning time, is not going to be optimal. These learning pockets that you've got on the evenings are later and later, and they're close to bedtime. So not only are they going to be not optimal, but they're going to impact your sleep as well, because cramming in knowledge, especially technical work, before bedtime is going to directly impact your sleep negatively. So then you have children, and this isn't a hypothetical schedule. This is my actual schedule. We have two small kids, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And something I learned, which people tell you from the outside before you have kids, but it doesn't really sink in until you have them, is that every day sort of belongs to them. And they also need a lot of structure. So every day they wake up consistently at 6:15, 6:30, and you have no choice but to get up with them. So there's a streamlined structure in place that is partially defined by them. The purple areas in this chart, by the way, are everything that's related to children in my life. So every morning is kind of taken because it's based around getting them ready, getting them out the door, and then getting yourself out the door to your job. Every evening, one of the people in the relationship, in my case, my wife, is doing the pickups, picks up the kid, and then we all have dinner together. And then getting the children to bed and cleaning up after them takes a good chunk of your schedule too. So I've got about an hour and a half every evening to do whatever I have to do in life, which never feels like enough. And then the weekends are very structured around children too, because they're little people that need a lot from you. Love is one thing, but they also just need exercise, activity, food, and you need to build a lot of things to just keep life going over there. So as you can see, there's a little bit of time for regular life tasks in my schedule and even less time for miscellaneous. So the green in this one is in learning time, it's miscellaneous, because structured learning is isn't realistic in my schedule of this. So this is a good segue into this notion of investment time, at which, if not for investment time in my company, I would not be able to do nearly the amount of things that I'm doing right now related to learning and growth, including this presentation. So investment time, simply put, is time you get at your regular job, dedicated to learning, growth, creation, things that are related to your craft. In my case, it's engineering, but it could work for anybody that's a designer, product person, a strategist, anybody really. And in our case, we do it Fridays, once a week. Friday is most people's investment time. It could also be spread out throughout the week, like you saw in a previous example. But either way, having a roughly 8-hour chunk of time makes it really impactful. In my time personally, I've created numerous presentations, a lot of blog writing. I wrote a book in my time. I've built a number of applications and learned tons along the process. So I'm really able to keep up my learning because of it, exclusively because of investment time. So investment time, if you haven't heard the time before, I know we call it investment time. Other companies that have it call it either growth time or learning time. Google's probably the most famous company we've ever heard of doing this, and they call it 20% time. I define it as paid time that is given to employees on a weekly basis for self-directed learning and growth. And I phrase that pretty carefully because every piece of that definition is important. So breaking it down a little bit. So first off, investment time, I believe it has to be paid time. Part of their salary done on company time and part of their typical work week without adding additional hours. And the reason I say this is because I know many engineers, including myself at just every other role that I've been at, we do this type of learning. If we want to stay competitive, we do this type of learning in the evenings, on the weekends, or at times outside of our job. So it's additional. It's kind of like work we're doing for free in a way, or it's things that we're doing for free that help us keep working or help us be better at our jobs and have other opportunities come out. Investment time is time that we're giving to employees without having them work, without having them requiring to do that outside of their work week. So if they have to work, if companies say they offer this and they're requiring people to work 40 hours doing their regular job tasks and then get learning time, that's cheating. That, in my opinion, that's cutting into their personal time, which, as you can see, people with children have a whole lot less, and quite a number of other people have a whole lot less additional time. So it's really most impactful when it is given as part of their job without adding additional hours, and also not required for them to do it nights and weekends if possible. Like if their regular job is 9 to 5 or 10 to 6, then it should fall into those hours. Investment time also has to happen regularly. Like I certainly heard of companies that will give people, 4 hours once a month or something like that to do things of this nature. Doesn't really have an impact, in my opinion. Like I haven't seen data on it, but I know that if you're trying to learn something and you're only putting in 4 hours once a month or 8 hours once a month, you're not going to learn. The brain simply does not learn that way. It's too sporadic. You need consistency, you need cadence, and you need focus. So investment time happens consistently in a chunk of time that is protected. If you're saying that, okay, even bi-weekly doesn't really work well, weekly is the best. But one thing you can't do is just say, yeah, you've got this time on, Fridays every week. But if other things come in from clients or from the product, you have to work on that first. We personally try very hard to protect the investment time because without that protection, not only do you not have a cadence, it's too easy for kind of like work creep to happen where everything becomes an emergency, and that's the time that's used to fix it, and then your investment time gets deprioritized. It also means that it makes employees less confident in using this time, and it really is an investment for the company as well. So it has to be protected, and it has to happen regularly. And the third most important characteristic of it is that there's some element of self-directedness to it. For one, nobody personally likes when if your company says, hey, you've got some free time this Friday, here, work on these tickets, or here, do some HIPAA compliance, or learn ASP.NET, and we're not even an ASP.NET shop. Learning happens best when there is an intrinsic interest in it. I've read some books on this regards to neuroscience, but like if you're going to learn better when you actually wanted to learn something, not when somebody told you to learn something. So it doesn't mean people should just go and learn anything, but there has to be some desire that came from the person, the engineer, designer, or employee, that they wanted to learn. And as we'll see, like there isn't a good, most focused, most productive investment time is fits the center of the Venn diagram of like things the employee wants to learn and things that benefit the company, but there has to be some self-directedness to it. So here's some examples to make things a little more concrete. I'll give you some categories of what constitutes productive investment time, at least the way we've seen it, and I'll talk about some of the things that come out of them. Learning is the most obvious example, right? And there's, we're talking traditional learning here, studying, reading, absorbing. Taking online courses is really obvious. Our engineers will do this stuff on every topic. Our company and many companies have like licenses like Egghead.io or lynda.com or any online learning centers, Pluralsight and such. So those are really obvious. And, if you can't think of something to do, you say, okay, what tech might you want to learn? Start with taking a course because there's no guidelines. It's really easy to start doing. Reading a book, same deal. Pursuing certification also works really well. In our company, we're a consultancy and we partner with companies like Stripe and Twilio. When employee finds those technologies interesting, pursuing certification engages their interest. It helps them grow in the technology, helps build their career by giving them certification. And it also helps us because the knowledge that we have in that technology goes stronger. And then research, like there's so many things to research, having them have dedicated time to do it, whether it's a tool or a library or a programming pattern or what have you, that's knowledge that's valuable to them, it's valuable to the work they do, and it's valuable to the team. We all know programming isn't just reading words or watching videos. In order to do it well, you need deliberate practice. So deliberate practice always takes tons of different forms. Open source contributions are great because it's a deliberate practice of sort of a novel form. A repo exists. You think it's a great one. Let me help it out a little bit more. You're learning a lot from reading the repo. You're learning a lot from contributing. And in addition, you're building your own geek cred. You're helping our company by, if it's a tool that we use, the tool just keeps on getting better the more you contribute to it. Then there's, there's testing out new libraries and tools, which you can read about one. But because there's so many, doing a little bit of a spike on one, whether it's a new framework, a new API interface, the spiking is really beneficial because it's, you're going to have hands-on experience with it. You could help find the holes in it and the use cases for it. And, in our case, sometimes it turns into RFCs and the RFCs turn into company processes. So it's knowledge that gets shared across the board and it frees up everybody's time a little bit more because we become more efficient. Building apps, designs, always good practice. And also it's creative work, which is a lot of fun. And then trying new techniques, which kind of falls into that. So similar to spikes of tools, it's spikes of techniques. So knowledge sharing is another thing that a lot of that learning will funnel into. Presentations, pairing, mentoring, shadowing could be something as simple as a lunch and learn or even a social media thread, as long as it really reinforces what people learn. So they're not only learning it better, but they're also giving that learning to the rest of the team. And I think RFCs kind of come into here. Maybe it's a step later, but like, whenever you're writing down what you discovered, whether it turns into a process or not, it's beneficial. Company processes. So RFCs are one I mentioned already. So that's been hugely helpful for us because every time somebody spikes on something, if they really like it, they can create an RFC and a certain percentage of them improve our process across the board. Internal tools is also awesome. We've had a lot of great wins in that area. We had somebody a while back just build like a Google spreadsheet script that help us break down, profit and loss versus for all our clients, because it tends to be hard to track. I don't know if we found a SaaS tool for that at this point, but like having someone build it was just a great way when we were a smaller team to leverage that and save a lot of manual time for the people that were doing it. Team activities. These are great. I mean, we all know that like things like co-working and hackathons, co-working especially is great if you're a purely virtual company like we are. If you're virtual, or even if you're not, like having a kind of regional co-working thing or just any kind of offsite co-working thing is kind of cool because it's a nice change of pace. And during that process, you could be working on things together, and sometimes throwing things together in a different setting is good for the mind, and it produces completely creative things. Hackathons, always useful. We've thrown a couple of them. We're just starting to really get into them, but hackathons always produce a ton of learning, a ton of team cohesion. So, it's very buzzwordy, but rapport, we have fun together. And then the things that come out of it usually turn into like internal products or projects that we just want to continue working on. Conference talks like this one, but also conferences that we attend, knowledge across the board. We all know this stuff is good. We've had an annual summit in person. So you can see there's just a huge variety of stuff. There's a lot of these things, and all of them benefit both the employee and the company. And everybody has a lot of fun working on them, and it in turn feeds back into their work, making everybody feel like more competent and more productive. So business benefits, I touched on a lot of them, but these I didn't touch on because these aren't things that necessarily employees care about, but the businesses are going to get as a result. First is recruiting. And we know it's a really hard market to hire in. Engineers, hey, you guys, you all have your pick of the litter in a lot of ways because everybody's hiring. Good talent is hard to find. And it's competitive. Like, everybody wants to bring on people, but engineers just have their choice of where they want to go. And it's an extremely appealing characteristic when you're a company that pays employees to learn a chunk of the week. For one, because few companies are doing it, it makes you really stand out, but also because it shows recognition for the people that you have on your team, which is only one way of doing it, but showing engineers that you care how they grow, regardless of whether they're working for you or not. But when they work for you, you indeed really care how they grow. It's appealing. Like, it's one of the things that attracted me to my company, and it's a reason for which I've grown immensely from having this benefit. So consider that. Recruiting is probably the number one thing, but retention also. I mean, when, for the people that are at our company, people love staying here. And this is one of the big reasons. I mean, obviously it's not the only reason. Like, you have to have a culture that really appreciates them and is enjoyable. But this is one way of showing that, they're growing. Like, people leave companies a lot of times because they're not growing. If people's knowledge gets stale, not only are they less relevant in the marketplace, but they're going to be bored, and boredom has a bigger impact on the brain than many people think. So people have certainly left their jobs because they're bored. So investment time is a big reason that people will want to stick around, as long as you're doing the other things right too. So here's the big thing, like, it has very practical implications as investment time. On one side, it may seem like velocity drops down if you're already working 40 hours a week and shipping tickets all week and just saying, hey, let's give away this one chunk of the week. But that time, the reason, back to the term investment usually involves initial down payment, right? If you're buying stock in a company that you think is going to grow, you're going to spend a bunch of money at first. But the idea is that those returns are going to compound. So you're going to have that money coming back 5x, 10x, whatever it is. So in the case of investment time, general terms, like, more knowledge and skill means that everyone's work is going to get more efficient. They're not only getting in more repetition in a different context, they're learning new things that are going to make every line of code they work better. They're going to approach problems in a more efficient manner. Their skill, their experience, and everything is going to grow. They're going to suggest new tools that are going to make work better as a whole, whether it's like open source libraries or ways of using them that are more efficient, or maybe it's SaaS products that are going to help workflows, or maybe they're building tools like the one I mentioned earlier that's going to save time for either a different chunk of the organization or the engineering team as a whole. If there's repetitive tasks that keep creeping up with your product or your service, then those can probably be automated in investment time if engineers want to do it. And then that'll make other engineers happier too, because there's going to be less that they have to do manually. And that's one of the things that boards me the most, at least, is when I have to do anything repetitive. I just want to centralize it, have it automated, and leave it, forget it. So your velocity should increase in the long run, absolutely, and your quality of code. So there's tangential benefits too. Some of the things that we do are content creation. So like we've had investment time for years, and the amount of technical blog posts that we put out is probably 50 to 100 a year. I put it on a chart somewhere and kind of forgot it, but we put out a lot of content, and that content has a recurring effect because it increases our SEO and visibility. Sometimes when we're talking to clients about the benefits of GraphQL for a business, we forward them to a blog post that I wrote on the ROI for businesses of using GraphQL and Apollo. So, it generates our visibility, it increases our credibility. Tools that get created simplify process and streamline it. The knowledge sharing turns into drying up your code and making sure that engineers that don't talk every day don't reinvent the wheel. And because as long as they know that somebody else solved this and it's in a repo somewhere, they know where to go to do it, and they just save a ton of time. So code centralization, lunch and learns, this all has this network effect of where we are saving time more and more and making things more efficient. And last is the home run potential. And this is the one that really, it kind of, I don't want to say it sneaks up on you, but it's not always obvious. But when you think about it, Gmail is the quintessential example of this. By giving engineers a day a week of investment time to work on projects, they occasionally create something that is awesome. And that's what Gmail came out of. That thing that gets created, you don't know what it is, and you can't force it or dictate it or even plan it sometimes. But simple fact of the brain being taken out of the reading a story off a card and implementing a feature mode, when you take out that structure and you have a little bit of a looser structure and a more creative endeavor, that triggers this big idea potential. And when you do it on a regular basis, sometimes amazing things come out of it. My book was a big product of that. I think it was probably the largest task to come out of investment time, and it was consistent. It took me a little while, but it was a major achievement for me, and I think it was a unique achievement for the company. The tools that we've developed for ourselves, the open source repos we've created. We have a wrapper around Next.js called Bison that now bootstraps all of our projects. All of our web projects start with this boilerplate that saves tons of time and tons of energy for everybody and teaches them in the process. Same for our React Native builds. This home run potential is great because eventually you're going to get a really big hit out of it. And that big hit is going to have that compounding effect in one shot. So the benefits are going to be 5x or 10x. So why aren't companies doing this? If this is a great thing, may seem obvious that it is from my angle, but there's obviously reasons that people have their reservations. So let's talk about them really quick. Number one, a lot of people actually haven't heard of this or even conceived it as a notion. Even if you've heard that Google does this sort of thing, it seems like kind of a legend. You don't think that my small company of 20 or 30 people can do it. It's actually true. You can do it with the right planning. We're around 30 to 40 people at any given time and growing, but we've been doing it since we were 10 people. So if you work the numbers right, you certainly can do it. The bigger reservation, I think, is that if you're not shipping or you're not doing your day job tasks, that this is just free time. And it feels like you're killing your velocity. You're going to increase pressure from people higher up in the work chain because they're going to see lower numbers. So it's a little bit of a scary thing. The key thing to take away, though, is that it is long-term investment, and it is more money in the long run. If you you do have to put that initial down payment in, because you are taking a risk of some sort, and the gains may or may not be obvious immediately. You may see, oh, we let these people loose and they started creating with a fervor, and they produce these amazing things for us. It may take a little time because sometimes people need a little guidance to do it right. When they start producing value, though, you're going to see that value compound more and more over time. And those things that I mentioned earlier with the home run potential, those are going to be more likely to happen. So you do need to give a little more time, but in the long run, it's going to be more valuable than that points of velocity that you lost. And then the third reason a lot of companies don't do it is because if they embrace the idea of it, say, that's great, how do I do it? It's a little hard to wrap your head around the logistics and plan it out. So here's a few tips for that. How to do it with minimal risk. First thing, start small. If you're a company of 500 people, don't say, everybody, 500 people, we're all taking Fridays for investment time, and just throw them into the void. That's really just throwing money away. You want to start really small, especially if you're a little concerned about it. 5 team members is a good one to start. Pick them however you want. I would say probably, either do it on one team or cherry pick one from 5 different teams. I'm not certain which of those is the best approach, but those are 2 different options. I would say keep it to 8 hours a week, or close to 8 hours a week. 4 is a maybe. Like if you were doing 4 hours a week, you could still do something valuable in that time, but 8 hours is much better, because then you have the possibility of like doing it even daily, like this daily learning time. And that's really a great way to learn or execute on anything. Take that time, protect it. Don't let scope creep like distract that time. And give it a quarter. If you do this for a quarter, we predict that you're going to show dividends far before the end of the quarter. I think maybe a month you'll see some kind of ROI from it. The things that people will produce is going to impress you. And then ultimately the ROI is going to be greater than the cost, but give it a quarter. If it doesn't happen right away, make sure that you're comfortable spending what you need to spend in order to enable them to do it for 3 months. And this is another really important thing, is guiding the focus. Again, you don't want to say, okay, what do you want to learn? Like, I want to learn Greek, but we don't have a Greek speaking audience. Like none of our customers speak Greek, but I just want to learn it anyway. It doesn't work that way. Let the engineers make a list of things that they want to learn, and things that are, they want to learn on a technical level. Like, do they want to pick up programming language? Do they want to pick up, new techniques? Do they want to learn back end versus front end? Picking up cloud technologies, whatever it is, have them kind of listed out on their own. And internally, like if you're an engineering manager or hiring manager, list out kind of some of the company goals for the team, and find where that overlap is. And there's guaranteed to be one. Employees generally aren't usually going to ask for things that are completely out of the void, that are completely out of the realm of what they do. But they definitely are going to ask for some of the things that are within the realm of what they do. And you can gauge their level of interest in each. Find the intersection with what is going to give them enjoyment and is going to help, push forward some company goal, even if it isn't the top priority company goal. And that's key. They're directing the time, but you're helping them shape it in a direction that is valuable for everybody. And then iterate on it, essentially. Whatever they work on, meet with them weekly, have a little one-on-one, have a little report in Slack, whatever it is, and say, okay, was this a fun exercise? What enjoyment did you get? What did you learn? And have them tell the team. It could be a 20-minute lunch and learn, like, hey, I learned this last week. We have a Friday demo meeting every Friday, where it's like a half hour, 45 minutes, where everybody just shares what they've been doing in investment time. And even those little one line, or we limit it to 90 seconds, actually. We have a timer set for 90 seconds. And when everybody shares, they, at the very least, if they're not really teaching somebody something in 90 seconds, they are letting people know something exists, this technique, this tool, whatever it is. And now that person can go to the person that originally did it and find out more and see where that use case can be used in their common work. So have them share the results, but also keep an eye on it and say, hey, you're not quite sticking to what you were doing. What can we do? Or is there a different direction you're going with it? And then find out what value is really coming from it. And you're going to see there are huge amounts of value, and the people are going to grow, and then the engagement will be there. And then you could iterate each round. So summary, investment time makes employees and companies happier. It's a huge untapped resource for a lot of companies. Don't sleep on it. It's got benefits of all kinds, namely employee happiness and recruiting and retention is one, but tons of impacts for the company, from everything from productivity increases to like SEO. It's something your company can do. Doesn't matter how big or small you are. You have to do it carefully, but it's valuable for your company and any role within the company, whether on design and engineering, product management, and so on. Everybody needs to learn, and that learning is always going to be beneficial. For hiring managers, my recommendation, start it small, iterate, pick goals everyone benefits from, and take a look at the results every week. And for engineers, if your company doesn't do this, tell them about it, make sure they know it exists, and make sure that they know that they can benefit from it and that it's good for everyone, and help them plan it if they're not able to wrap their heads around the logistics, and just tell everybody about it, because this is a huge untapped resource for everyone everywhere. And that's it. Thanks for watching. I'm Mike. Reach out to me anytime on any of these links, and I'll see you all soon.
That was a really interesting presentation. I really liked it. I'm going to have a question, but we do have a couple of questions for you. And the first one is from Anonymous. How could you ensure that employees are really learning, practicing during investment time, especially at their home office?
That's a great question. I'll ask you this, I'll ask her and answer for you. How do you know they're working if they're not at their home office when they're supposed to be working? And the reason is twofold, and it's the same answer for investment time. Number one is trust. There has to be some sense of trust when you're hiring a virtual employee to begin with. And there has to be another sense of trust to offer them investment time. And in my opinion, they're one and the same. When you're hiring people to be virtual, or you're taking an in-office employee and letting them be virtual, you should already trust them, because the trust comes from your good sense of hiring. For investment time, number one is trust. The second is we're reviewing afterwards. So the way you know employees working when they're supposed to be working from home, you see the results of it. You see the features they've created, you see the work that they've done, you see their communication. And then same with investment time. And that's why we review investment time every week. We have people demo, we have people turn it into lunch and learns. There can't be that kind of like, I don't trust you, so I'm not going to give you this thing. Trust starts with somebody taking a risk, and everyone's already working for you. So you'll take that, you'll extend that branch and say, okay, I'd like to give this a try. But when they produce things that you see are valuable, you're going to know that they were working during their time and that they were producing things.
Okay, good. We have a question from Nicholas. His question is, we have 20% in this investment time, but only voluntarily, not every Friday for everyone, and people barely use it. Is this fixed time that important, or did we miss something?
I think it's really important. I do know that there are some challenges to it in getting it working in organizations. Sometimes, so it really depends in the details of your case. And what I would personally do, if I were you, is sit down with some of the engineers and interview them and kind of find out why they aren't taking advantage of it. What I find is that in our organization, it's there from the get-go. It's there in the job descriptions, and it's something that attracts people to the job descriptions. So you know that it is valuable to them, and they will take advantage of it. But that said, people sometimes still need encouragement to do it. So what we do is we reassure them, or even prod them to use it. Like, hey, you should be using investment time in this day. And some people just need a little encouragement. Others, and this will come about when you're interviewing them, kind of asking like, why don't you do it? Others just either don't have the same organizational skills, like where they're good at planning it. And others do, but they don't necessarily know what to take on. And that's why that having that pool of example things that they can try is helpful, along with a little guidance from the manager, like, hey, why don't you try this? This seems to be in line with something you want. This Friday, why don't you do that? And so it really comes down to the personalities. As far as why it's not working at your organization, you got to see what the pattern is with your employees and get to the bottom of it. It may be a pattern of they don't feel motivated to do it. It may be a pattern of they feel afraid to because nobody else is doing it. And that's another thing to keep conscious of. You want to make sure that they feel encouraged and empowered to do this because it's good for them and it's good for the company. If it's just kind of sitting there and they, it's kind of like being, at a buffet that just opened up and the food is there and everybody's afraid to be the first person to go. But then if 5 people are going eating the food, then, okay, it's fine. I'm going to go do it. So yeah, in a long way of saying, find out which of those roadblocks is preventing most of your engineers from doing it, and give them a little encouragement, a little guidance in whichever area is the challenge.
Okay, I think you answered, Anonymous has 2 more questions, and I think you answered one of them for him with this. We got one from Peter Agoch. How to protect time with tremendous business pressure?
How do you, sorry, phrase it again?
How do you protect this investment time when you have tremendous business pressure?
It's hard. So the business pressure is the key. And, it's kind of like business pressure is a tricky thing in general. How do you protect people's stress and their willingness to stay at the company when they have tremendous business pressure? It's a very tricky thing. Business pressure has to kind of be reduced. Otherwise, people are going to break anyway. So introducing this is going to be really hard in that situation, but either way, you have to loosen that pressure somehow. Otherwise, something's going to go wrong. Similarly, for investment time, the pressure is going to exist. If your culture already has a lot of business pressure, it's going to exist from Monday through Friday, regardless. If you can make the case that this investment time is going to, in the long run, pay more dividends, then you'll realize that, whether it's Monday to Friday to Monday or Thursday, the pressure is not going away, even if you take your weekend. So acknowledge for one that the pressure is there regardless. Number 2, say that, okay, knowing the pressure is there, this is time that is going to help the pressure over time. It's kind of like I'm working on a client project that is heavy in technical debt. But at the same time, the clients and the executives, they want feature development on top of it constantly. And there's fires breaking out. Those fires are going to break out. That need for more features is always going to be there unless we do this investment time. So in my case, it's not investment time, it's refactoring and tech debt removal. And I push for that and I say, we've got to do this regardless every week. Otherwise, the business pressure is going to continue to increase because our problems are still going to exist. But this time that we're spending is valuable enough to help reduce it in the long term. And all of us have to be in it for the long term because too much pressure for too long isn't sustainable. We'll have heart attacks or strokes. So take that in mind. And I'm glad to talk more offline about it, but I know it's a big challenge to solve. The key is pushing long-term value.
Okay, Mike. That's all the time we have right now. So I want to thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. I
you.
learned a lot from it. I would have my own questions. How does this apply to traditional industries as opposed to a rapidly changing high-tech industry? But we don't have time for that right now. I'll write to you and ask you.
Yeah, email me anytime.
So once again, I'd like to say thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for having me.
Okay.